Okay, very good afternoon to all the people who are here to attend the webinar. I am Sumit Sharda, Chartered Accountant by profession, and also teaching Indian accounting standards or accounting standards for almost 9 years now. Also, I am a practicing Chartered Accountant in this field for implementation of Indian accounting standards. So, welcome all. We are here for a specific discussion on Indian Accounting Standard 116 leases, which deals with leases, on how the same will be accounted for in the books of the companies. Okay, in the books of the companies, a lot of people over here are chartered accountants. Few of them are students, and a lot of them are professors. A very good afternoon to all the professors and all eminent chartered accountants and students over here. For professors, this is going to be something new. So we are going to start a bit with some basics. We are going to discuss some basics also about it. So it is more of accounting aspect, how the accounting will be handled, managed by the companies. The main concern why we are taking this webinar, there has been a recent amendment also by ICAI 3 days back. The main reason why we are taking this webinar is see, lots of companies recently we came to know that because of COVID impact, Corona impact, their rental amount, they were given concessions for few months, or maybe the rental amount was reduced either temporarily or permanently, or maybe this rent amount, like they some of them even left the premises, they also vacated the premise. So how should all these, like discounting of rent, concessions in rent, and other aspects, how the same has to be accounted for? What exactly does Indian Accounting Standard 116 asks for all this to be done or to be dealt with? Okay. So initially, I'll give you just a gist on how Indian Accounting Standard 116 works. That will be the first stage. Second stage will be what happens when discount is given, or when concession is given, or when we reduce the rental area that we were using. If the area is reduced or if the area is increased, whatever be the case, how do we deal with all these scenarios? And then the last part will be the amendment, what ICAI along with Ministry of Corporate Affairs came up with the final amendment as to how to deal with these COVID concessions. Okay, so the amendment that has been brought is voluntary. That's why we need to know other aspects as well. Okay, so I'll straight away move towards this concept. See, if I talk about the very first point, what do we mean by lease? So Indian Accounting Standard 116, these are the standards which are necessary, which is necessary for accounting aspect, the accounting of leases. So whenever there is a property which has been taken on lease, a building or maybe a machine, something like that, so all these assets are accounted as per Indian Accounting Standard 116, which says that whenever you enter into a rental agreement, a contract, whenever you enter into a contract, such contract which conveys a right, you are getting a right to use a particular asset. So if there is a building, you are getting a right to use that building. If it is a machine, you are getting the right to use that machine, but it should be an asset. It cannot be a service. So if I am providing you any consultation and for that you are charging, there is a contract, it is on monthly basis, we are not talking about them over here. In exchange for a consideration, it should not be free, it has to be for a consideration. Okay. Moving ahead, there are two aspects which are covered over here. One of the aspect is considered to be the right to use asset, which is to be shown in the balance sheet, right to use asset, and another one is the liability related to those assets. Liability related to those assets which are to be accounted for. Now, my main concern over is modification. So, but first thing that we will cover is this aspect. I'll try to explain you how do we account the right to use assets, or how do we account for lease liabilities. First we will check that and then we will talk about the modifications. Okay, so moving ahead, let me give you a very small example to understand what do I mean by a right to use asset or what do I mean by lease liability. Let's go through this one example. Lessee enters into a 10-year property lease. Okay, it is a 10-year property lease. He has taken a property on lease for 10 years with an annual rent of 50,000 payable in the beginning of each year. So rent is something that he will pay in the beginning of every year. Let's say there is a discount rate of 5%. The similar asset, if you go to buy in the market, generally the interest rate that is applicable if you take a loan on such asset to buy such assets is 5%. So right now that will be more than sufficient to understand what do I mean by 5%. Let's say the rate is 5%. So what do we do? What the standard asks you to do? So any person who takes an asset on rent, whether it is machinery, whether it is a building, it could be any asset which has been taken on rent. What happens is we discount these future payments that you have to do, these future payments that you are going to make at discount rate 5% for the complete tenure of lease. Complete tenure, whatever the tenure of lease is. Over here, the tenure of the lease is 10 years. You're going to pay 50,000 rupees every year. So at 5% if I discount, I'm going to open an Excel sheet in front of you for this calculation. Okay. So just a minute. Over here, let's say 50,000 rupees in the beginning of every year. We need to find present value. Okay. We need to find present value of this amount. Let's say, as I told you, this is for a period of 10 years. Every year, the amount being same. What do? We find present value. Excel has this present value concept. What we need to do is I'll discount it using 5% rate. So since the rent is paid in the beginning of every year, first year amount is not discounted, but subsequent years will be discounted at 5%. What we need to do is we need to determine the present value for the next 10 years. Okay, I will simply multiply all these present values and determine the sum. So it gives you around 405,391. Okay. 405,391. Now coming back over here, it is given 355, but if you add this 50,000 as well, not audible, sorry. Technical team, one of the person is saying that it is not audible. Others, is it audible? Is the same problem being faced by everyone, or are others able to hear? So we are not getting your screen. Okay, Rajnish sir, it is audible. Yes, it is audible. Okay. For some people it is not audible. I believe there is some hardware problem, but like from my side it is clear. Okay, from my side it is clear. Are you all able to see the screen also? Yes, it is visible. Okay. So let's continue. Let me continue with this. Okay. Now what is happening over here is, let's try to understand. We need to show an asset. See, I have shown the right to use asset. We can see a journal entry over there. There's a debit entry. Right to use asset 4,05,391. The one I had shown you in the Excel sheet. Okay, 4,05,391. Now, why are we showing it as an asset? Asset is something against which we have future rights to use the asset. What do you mean by asset? Something that gives you economic benefit in future and which is being controlled. Now, since we have taken an asset on lease, a property on lease, you can carry out your business activities over there. So asset is well within your control. There are some restrictions given by the landowner, but Otherwise, you can use it as per your convenience, as per your business requirement. That is why we entered into the agreement. So we are showing that asset in our books. Okay. So we call it right to use asset. As per the standard, the requirement is we call it right to use asset. It is shown separately in the balance sheet. Separately, after showing as tangible assets, then there are intangible assets. Then we show right to use assets. Now, since this is since we have entered into the contract, now you are contractually liable for the next 10 years. For the next 10 years, to pay 4,05,391. 4,05,391, something that you are liable to pay for the next 10 years. So 50,000 is immediate. That is why we can see there is a credit entry of cash to cash 50,000 rupees. The remaining amount is your liability, which will be carried over 3,55,391. Okay, 3,55,391. Now this amount, what are we going to do in subsequent years? How do we deal with this amount in subsequent years? I'm again going to share the Excel sheet for you all. Now let's say this is the first year. What will happen in first year? The liability that we have shown was 405,391. 405,391. Now what will happen? You have paid an amount of rupees 50,000. You have immediately paid an amount of 50,000 rupees. This will be adjusted against this liability. This will not be expensed off. What used to earlier happen, try to understand, you people used to call it as a rental expense. Now the standard has been revised. It says don't call it rental expense. This is repayment of liability. 50,000 is repayment of liability. So now the balance will be post repayment of liability 3,55,391. At the end of first year, we are going to show interest at 5%, the rate at which we had discounted. We call it unwinding of discount. This is expense, interest expense. We consider it as a liability. We have taken a loan. We consider it that we have taken a loan of 3,55,391. And we charge interest on the same at the rate of 5%. 5%. Okay. So interest increases your liability. I am going to add both of them. This becomes my next year's opening. Next year's opening will be 3,73,160. Now what happens? You are again paying 50,000 rupees. It will again reduce your liability. And now next year again the interest will be on this particular amount at 5%. Okay, and so on for the next 10 years. For next 10 years, I'll just quickly complete it on Excel. I will show you what happens in the next 10 years. It turns out to be zero. If we can see in the last year, the balance turns out to be zero over here. Okay, so finally the liability turns out to be zero in 10 years period. The liability turns out to be zero. So I'll stop sharing now. Okay, so this is what the basic requirement of this particular standard is. Okay, I hope there is a doubt. When can acquisition of asset be covered under Indian Accounting Standard 103? Sir, 103 is business combinations, and assets are covered under 103 when you acquire another business. So asset acquisition is not covered in 103. Business acquisition is covered under 103. Okay, bit of questions I'll take a bit later. Let's try to first complete this concept a bit. Okay, so right now what I was telling you is about this particular example of how do we deal with Indian accounting standards. Okay, so now moving ahead, let's talk about what is the requirement of COVID, like what is COVID impact. Now how is COVID impacting all these lease accounting? Okay, coming up to this part a bit, let me just check if I have skipped out any of the questions. What is the provision related to rounding off of interest? There is as such no provision related to rounding off of interest. Yes, you can round it off in the multiples as required as per Ministry of Corporate Affairs requirement. For accounting purpose, we don't round off. Like the rounding off is in the figures of multiples of 1 rupee. It is not 100 rupee or 1000 rupees. Okay. Will the right to use asset depreciate? Yes, I was supposed to come on this. The right to use asset shown over here will be depreciated in the coming years. in the coming whatever be the life, in this case it is 10 years contract, the example that we have seen right now, the asset will be depreciated in these 10 years. Okay, some people are facing sound issue. See, please don't ask them in this question part right now. Okay, anything else? Okay, fine. Right now I have answered a few questions. I'll come back to others as well a bit later. Question session we will keep it a bit later. Let's try to understand what happens in modification. Okay, now when I talk about modification part, what is going to happen now? Now in COVID, all of you may have seen there were some rent concessions that were given by lots of landowners, property owners. The properties rent for the month of March, April, May, also June somewhat was reduced by them. Okay, they had reduced these rental amounts. Now the point is, are we going to revise the calculations that we had done to determine the lease liability? Do we need to revise those calculations? Okay, that is something that will be doubtful. Okay, wait a minute. Just a minute. Okay, now the point is that modification, what does Indian Accounting Standard 116 says? It says that if there is any modification in the contract, any form of modifications, you should adjust your right to use asset and you should also adjust your lease liability for the same. Any modifications. Suppose there is an increase in the area that you were earlier paying rent for and you now need more area, so you have increased the area. With COVID impact, we have seen reduction in the use of area. Suppose there is increase in life. Earlier the contract was for 5 years, now we have revised the contract to 9 years, could be the case. There could be the case of earlier the contract was for a particular rental amount and now the rental amount has been changed, either increased or reduced. Mostly reduced is what we are dealing with in this particular case. Now in all these cases, what will happen is you need to revise two things: one, lease liability; two, right to use asset. And everything is revised as per the requirement of lease liabilities. And how do these requirements, how do we deal with these requirements? I will come back, I'll come to that point. Okay. So talking about these modifications can be of two types. We are changing the scope of the contract. How do we change the scope of the contract? Changing the scope of the contract takes place in two patterns. Either you are increasing the term or decreasing the term. Two, you are increasing the area under lease contract or reducing the area under lease contract. Two types. Another is no change in scope, just change in rental amount. You are increasing the rental amount or you are reducing the rental amount. How do we deal with these specific cases is something that we have to see majorly, and then we will talk about its COVID impact over here. So coming up with the example related to the same, let's see an example. Entity A has 10-year lease on 5,000 square meter of office space. Annual payment 1 lakh payable at the end of each year. So at the end of every year. Now earlier the contract was beginning of the year, now the contract is end of the year. At the end of each year, the rate used to discount is entity A's incremental borrowing rate 6%. As I told you, if you are going to buy this asset, at what rate you are going to get this asset is something which helps you to decide what will be the right to use asset and lease liability amount. Okay, so 6% is the rate we are going to use for discounting. At the beginning of year 7, entity A and lessor amend the lease by extending it to further 4 years, additional 4 years. So what have you done over here? You have increased the lease term by additional 4 years. The annual payment remain unchanged. At the beginning of year 7, entity A's incremental borrowing rate is 7%. So see, borrowing rate keeps changing every year. To determine the lease liability initially, there is a message from Okay. Now, For any, what I am trying to explain you over here is that for any discount rate changes, we don't change the value of right to use asset or lease liability. We don't change them for change in discount rates. Okay, we just change them when there is an amendment. When there is an amendment in the contract. Here we have increased the scope. If you can see, we have increased the scope by additional 4 years. So earlier the contract was for 10 years. Now what have you done? You have increased the scope of the contract by adding another 4 years in the contract. You have extended it by further 4 years. So now what happens? Now this was done in the beginning of year 7. What happened initially? Let's see first that. Then we will see what happens in the beginning of 7th year. So I'll tell you how the accounting aspect is dealt with over here. Okay. First thing, the rental amount over here is 1 lakh. Okay, 1 lakh for the next 10 years. What happened at inception when the first time the contract was entered? I am again sharing you a screen over here. Okay. What happened in the beginning was you were paying a rent of rupees 1 lakh, and this is something that you are going to pay for the next 10 years. Okay. You are going to pay this for the next 10 years. We are going to discount this using the incremental borrowing rate. As you can see in the question, the incremental borrowing rate given initially is 6%. Okay, is 6%. And end of the year payment is being made. So how are you going to discount? You discount it 6% annually. Every year's amount is discounted at 6%. Okay. What are we going to do? We are going to multiply them and add them completely. So we can see 7,36,008, 7,36,008. This is the amount at which we are going to show right to use asset at inception, beginning of the year, and lease liability in the beginning of the year. Okay. Let me continue a bit about accounting for lease liability. In the beginning of the year, we are going to show this lease liability at 7,36,000. Now over here, since the payment is being made at the end of the year, I am not deducting repayment first. I am taking the interest first on it. Okay. So it will be multiplied at 6%. 6%. If I talk about repayments, the repayment amount every year is 1 lakh rupees. So as I told you, we don't consider these payments to be rental expense anymore. We show them as a repayment of these liabilities. Interest is an expense that we are going to show. Now interest increases the liability, repayment reduces the liability. Okay. So this is how we deal with them. Okay. Now this is something that happened for the next 6 years. This is something that happened for the next 6 years, and 7th year beginning, the amount was 3,46,510, as we can see over here, 3,46,510. So now I am stopping the sharing. We can see these figures over here. We will be able to see these figures over here in the PowerPoint. 3,46,511. Okay. So on the date of modification, the lease liability was visible at 3,46,511. What about right to use asset? This was an asset that is to be depreciated over the period of 10 years. We had shown the asset at 7,36,008 rupees on Excel sheet. So I am not opening the Excel sheet right now. I am telling you, we had shown the asset initially at 7,36,008 rupees. Okay. Now 7,36,008 rupees, if you are going to depreciate for 10 years, and it's been 6 years, total depreciation turns out to be 4,41,604. 4,41,604, which changes your lease liability amount to 7,36,008, 2,94,400. Now this amount is not visible over here. because we don't need it. We don't need the value of right to use asset. But what is necessary is what will be the impact of lease liability. Now, lease liability amount is visible on your screen, 3,46,511. So just about right to use asset it is going to depreciate. That is the only reason I told you about this. Now, coming up to the amendment part, coming up to the modification part, what happened is you have increased the lease term by 4 years. What have you done? You have increased the lease term by 4 years. Okay. Now, earlier we had 7th year, 8th year, 9th year, 10th year, we had 4 years remaining. We have increased it by further 4 years, making it 8 years now. The contract scope has increased to 8 years. Okay. What is the rental amount? Nothing is mentioned over here. So what we will assume, the further 4-year increase will be assumed at same 1 lakh rupees. Same amount. As we had seen earlier, same amount, 1 lakh rupees will be considered. Now what happens? We are going to rediscount the remaining amount. 1 lakh rupees is the rent that you have to pay for 7th year, 8th year, 9th year, 10th year, and further 4 years. We are going to rediscount on the rate on the date of modification. We are going to rediscount this on the date of modification, the rate of discount on the date of modification, which is 7%. This is modification accounting. Okay. So this was the main crux that we need to understand about modifications, and then I'll come down to what was the COVID impact related to the same. So what if you decrease the scope? What if the time period is reduced? Let's say for the 4 years, it was reduced to just 2 years. 4 years was reduced to 2 years. So what will happen? We are going to discount 1 lakh for these 2 years at 7%. 1 lakh for this 2 years at 7%. Okay. So what is, how are we going to do this? Coming back to the Excel sheet now. We are going to now rediscount. I'll show you over here, 7th year, 8th year, 9th year, 10th year. And we have further 3 years of extension. Now we need to discount this at 7%. So what will we do? Same way, we are going to multiply it, find it again, and take the sum. 7,47,663. Okay, the amount can be seen at 3,46,510, 3,46,510 in your books. You are increasing this to 7,47,663. So whatever is the increase over here, whatever is the increase, let me tell you the difference. We are going to increase the lease liability by this amount, and also the right to use asset will be increased by this amount. This is modification accounting. Whatever is the change in scope, because of change in scope, whatever additional that you have to pay, this additional will lead to like increase in the value of right to use asset. Okay. So wait a minute, moving ahead. 7th year to 14 years, 8 years, 1 lakh 7%. Okay, over here the present value is turning out to be 5,97,130. Wait a minute. I think there has been some calculation mistake done while making the PowerPoint. Don't worry, but that is what is written over here. What happens is the difference amount will lead to increase in right to use asset value. Okay, there are certain questions. Why not present value at year 7? Yes, we are taking the present value at year 7 only. Oh, okay. I have taken the present value to be constant. The PV rate that I had taken in Excel sheet was constant. That is why the mistake was shown. Okay, correct. Thank you. Thanks a lot. You people told me about it. Yes, so the answer given in the PowerPoint sheet over here is correct. 5,97,130. So 5,97,130, if we compare with 3,46,511, the difference will increase the right to use asset value and lease liability value as well. Okay. Now increase in scope basically leads to a separate contract. We are going to see what happens with decrease in scope, and that is what will be the main aspect. Okay. So now coming up to another example to understand this concept a bit more for decrease in scope. Over here we can see that lessee enters into a 10-year lease for 5,000 square feet of office space. In the beginning of year 6, lessee and lessor agree to amend the original lease for remaining 5 years. So 10-year contract, already 5 years were lapsed. For remaining 5 years, you are amending the contract to reduce the lease payment from 1 lakh to 95,000. So this is what basically happened in this COVID impact period, right? The rental amounts were reduced. So from 1 lakh, the amount is reduced to 95,000. The interest rate implicit in the lease cannot be readily determined. Lessee's incremental borrowing rate has changed from 6% to 7%. So there's a change. Earlier it was 6%. Now it has been amended. It has changed to 7% on the date of modification. The annual lease payment are payable at the end of each year. How should the modification be accounted for? So first let's understand what Indian Accounting Standard 116 is saying. Then we will see what is the modification that has been provided and how the modification should be accounted for. Like what is the amendment by ICAI and Ministry of Corporate Affairs and how we are going to deal with the same. First, let's try to understand over here what will be the accounting treatment. Here, you are not changing the lease term. Here, you are not changing the area that is under rent. So 5,000 square feet of plot area, you are not changing that 5,000 square feet of plot area. And you are also not changing the lease rental amount. Okay, the lease term. But lease rental amount is changed. There is no change in scope. Just a change in payment terms. No change in scope, just a change in payment terms. Okay. So what the standard says is when there is no change in scope, just change in payment terms, make all adjustments again to right to use asset itself, revise the lease liability and make adjustments to the right to use asset. So let's see, I'll again open yes, the scope remains the same. So what I will again open the Excel sheet and try to explain you what happened initially and what happened after 5 years. Okay. So initially the contract was 1 lakh rupees of rent for 10 years and the rate of discount is 6%. So the contract is same. If we can see, the contract is same over here. Coming up to screen sharing. The contract is same over here. This similar contract, right? So initially the asset was accounted at 7,36,008 rupees. Liability was also accounted at 7,36,008 rupees. Now in the beginning of year 6, so in this table, I will delete 7th year's data. Okay. In the beginning of 6th year, we are trying to revise the amount from 6th year to 10th year, remaining period 5 years, to 1 lakh rupees per month. Okay, 1 lakh rupees per month. So this will become 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, deleting other parts, also changing this discount rate. Okay. Now the discount rate on the date of modification was 7% and the rental amount has reduced to 95,000. So what I will do, I'll change this 1 lakh rupees to 95,000 rupees and try to recalculate the amount. We can see the recalculated amount turns out to be 3,89,518. So the liability that was earlier appearing at 4,26,236, 4,21,236 has reduced to 3,89,518, which means you are reducing the liability by 31,718. 31,718. Okay. This is something that we have shown in the screen. Let me come up to the next slides. So this was in the beginning of year 6, as we had seen, 4,21,236 on my slide. Over here it is 4,21,090, a bit of a very small difference. Okay, 95,000, 7% discounted. You are getting the liability, as we can see over here, to be 3,89,500. It is rounded off to 500 rupees. The difference is 31,590. What are we going to do? We are going to adjust it to right to use asset. How it will be adjusted? Lease liability reduced, lease liability debit to right to use asset credit. We are reducing the amount of right to use asset. What will happen? Depreciation will change for next 5 years. Okay. Now think, right now the calculation that I am giving you is on yearly basis. This is to be done on monthly basis. What happened in COVID? March, April, May, June, 4 months of rent was reduced. For some people it turned out to be zero. For some people 50% discount, some people 25% discount. Which means we are going to change the complete right to use asset value and the complete lease liability amount for the remaining lease period. You are going to change the complete lease liability that was appearing in your books. All the companies all around India are going to do this, and you are going to consider this to be the lease impact. Okay. So now this was very tricky and lot complicated, because rents are not annual, rents are paid on monthly basis. So this turns out to be a very huge amount. Okay, a very huge change also for auditors, also for shareholders to understand, and that too just for 4 months period. See, if you are changing the scope, you are reducing the lease term, you are leaving an area, doing all this exercise is good, but just giving a concession for 4 to 5 months to do something like this is not like worth to do as per Indian accounting standard, or to do these calculations. So ICAI came up with the amendment. When we had planned this seminar, the amendment was yet to be confirmed. There was just a draft, but by the time we are taking the seminar, it has been confirmed. So it has not been added in the PowerPoint, but I'll explain you very well what will happen. We are not going to make any change if there is just a change in rental amount. Okay, then I'll tell you the lease period, the term period that is explained. We are going to see that as well. We are not going to change the lease liability amount. We are not going to change the right to use asset amount. Whatever discount you have received has to be credited to P&L in the month of discount. Whatever discount given has to be credited in the month of discount. Yes, there are certain carve outs. We are not going to discuss this right now over here. Okay, exactly not carve outs. We can say carve-ins rather. Okay, there are no carve outs as such. There are more of carve-ins. Okay, coming back, what will happen in this case? So, what is the amendment that has been suggested? What will happen? I will again share a screen with you and try to explain you this concept. What will happen, we will keep this amount constant, 4,21,236. Now let's say this is a month. In sixth, when you will pay 1 lakh in 6th year, the journal entry that will be passed is lease liability debit. Lease liability will be debited by the amount that is supposed to be reduced over here. Okay. Let me come up to this amount. Let me also write down interest expense first. Interest expense will be on this opening amount at the rate of 6%. Lease liability will be reduced by this differential amount. It will be on 1 lakh only. Though you are paying 95,000, this will be reduced on the basis of 1 lakh only. Let me come down to that amount. 2. Cash, you have paid only 95,000 rupees. You have got a concession of 5,000 rupees. What will we do? We will credit the concession to PRL. So lease liability will be same 1 lakh minus the interest amount. We will assume that the liability amount has reduced by that much amount. We are not going to do this revised calculation. We will pass this journal entry. Okay, we are going to pass this journal entry. Whatever discount received will be credited to profit or loss account. I hope you have understood a bit of rough idea about the amendment. So coming back, try to understand, this is voluntary, this is not mandatory. Means if you want to revise the complete lease amount, you can do so. No issues with that. That is permitted. But 95,000 rupees, the difference 5,000 to be credited to PRL is permitted now by ICAI, MCA. The amendment was basically suggested by IFRS. IFRS came up with this amendment last month, not even last month, in the month of May. Okay, and we have just recently, 1 week back, implemented the same. Okay, so there are two options. This is voluntary. This is not compulsory. This is voluntary. Moving ahead. This discount should be given to you. What this amendment says is this discount should be given to you up to June 2021. the lease discount, and this is only for discounts, not for increase in rent. Not for increase in rent, this is only for discounts. So if a discount has been given to you, and this discount is for the next up to June 2021, then you are eligible for these journal entries. This credit of P&L that we have seen, the amendment, then you are eligible for this journal entry. If the discount extends June 2021, if the discount extends the period of June 2021, let's say your lease agreement is up to December 2021 and the discount is up to December 2021, then in that case, we are going to only consider, we are not going to consider this amendment applicable to you. You cannot do it. Some professionals ask me, some office people ask me, sir, let's say we received a discount up to December 2021. Up to June 2021, we will follow this policy. From July, we are going to adjust it to right to use asset. No, you cannot do it. If you have received a discount only up to June 2021, you can adopt this voluntary implementation. If you have received a discount for a period beyond June 2021, you cannot adopt this voluntary implementation accounting aspect. So if the discount is up to December 2021, you cannot use this voluntary amendment provided. Okay, then you will have to revise the complete right to use the lease liability amount and adjust it to lease liability. Moreover, if there is a change in scope, increase in area, reduction in area, increase in lease term, reduction in lease term, also in those cases, you cannot use this amendment. This is not allowed to be used. Okay, so that is what basically this modification is all about. Now I'll come down to Q&A. There were lots of questions. I have not seen them till now, so let me just can you please mention what is the lease rental called now? We call it as lease liability. Will the right to use asset depreciate? I'm open to questions. You can ask me the questions. I'm going to take them one by one. The first question is, what the right to use asset depreciate? Yes, the right to use asset will depreciate. Okay. Next one. Will it be covered under IND AS 16, the depreciation part? Yes, it will be covered, but depreciation will not be as per Indian Accounting Standard 16. It will be as per lease term. What I mean to say is, as per Indian Accounting 16, there is componentization concept for depreciation. We don't apply it over here. We straight line depreciated over the lease term. Straight line. Okay. Please mention what the lease rental is called now. We call it repayment of lease liability. The lease rental amount is repayment of lease liability. We don't show it as an expense in profit or loss. Okay. Okay. The next question asked is the backward method of calculating installment? Is this the backward method of calculating installment? I am not sure what do you mean by backward method. There is no backward method. We are just calculating whenever anything is revised, we just rediscount it on the date of revision. So I don't think we are going backward. We are moving forward only. Okay. Next one. Sorry to interrupt. Cannot be asset acquisition. Wherein a mall is installed and the we have a question which says that suppose an asset is acquired and the asset is a part of a mall is installed and the contract specifies the nature of acquisition. Sir, this if you have acquired a mall is again covered under Indian Accounting Standard 16. Now this is a very there are very limited assumptions for me. If you have acquired a mall and you are going to run it as per your requirements, that is Indian Accounting Standard 16, property, plant and equipment. But if you have acquired a mall with already people have been there are people who are already there giving you rent, the complete mall is being managed by some people, and there has to be two things, not just mall. Management of mall has also been acquired. So if mall along with management of mall has been acquired, we will account it under business combination Indian Accounting Standard 103. But if you have only acquired mall, it is covered under Indian Accounting Standard 16. Okay. Acquisition of mall is not covered under leases. It is not a part of this standard 116. Okay. So moving ahead. Sir, the amount of discount remains the same in each year. No, the discount rate changes. At one point, I had made that mistake of calculation. Regarding discount rate, it doesn't change every year unless there is an amendment. Whenever there is lease modification, we change the discount rate. Otherwise, discount rates are not changed. Discount rate remains same for all the years. Unless there is amendment, we don't change the discount rate. Discount rate remains same in all the years. Okay. Next one is accounting in the books is covered under which Ind AS? Indian Accounting Standard 116 is dealing with the accounting over here. Indian Accounting Standard 116. Okay. Next one. Is there a carve out? We will, okay, carve outs are a bit different. Indian Accounting Standard 116 doesn't have any carve out. As I told you, there are carve-ins. Okay. So don't you think the nature of the contract is very important, whether covered by 115 and 116? Yes, nature of the contract is very important. The session today was about modification impact and what is COVID impact on that. So I have not covered the nature of contract concept over here. Yes, nature of contract has a very big impact, whether it is covered under 116 or whether it is covered under 115. Should it be considered as lease or should it be considered as a part of revenue recognition? Yes, sir, you are correct. But the scope of this seminar was a bit limited. That's why. Moving ahead. Sir, can investment property under Indian Accounting Standard 40? Wait a minute. I think I missed something. Investment property under Indian Accounting Standard 40 can be a right to use asset investment property under 116. In that case, how will it be shown under Division 2 Balance Sheet Schedule 3? Generally, you don't take an investment property on lease. Generally, like you are taking a property for capital appreciation, you will buy it. You are taking it for subletting. Subletting, it is covered under Indian Accounting Standard 116. I was not able to cover sublet in this webinar. Our concern was about modifications. So saying that it is covered under Indian Accounting Standard 40 won't be correct. If you have taken any asset on lease, whether it was for use in business or whether it was for investment concept, which cannot be possible, like practically it is not possible. We don't cover it under Indian Accounting Standard 40. It is still covered under Indian Accounting Standard 116. 116 is very clear. Any asset taken on lease will be covered in this standard. You are not going to deal with the same in 16 or you are not going to deal with it the same in 40 or maybe 38 intangible assets, whatever be the case. Okay. Next one. The last journal entry that you showed did not tally. That is debit and credit did not match. Debit and credit did not match. Wait a minute. Both of them are 1 lakh only. Last entry. Oh, sorry. In the last journal entry, the interest amount that I had deducted was wrong. The interest amount to be deducted was 25,000 that we had calculated. 25,000 rupees. So I had deducted 1 year prior interest amount. Current year's interest was to be deducted. That is why the difference is coming. Entry is going to tally. It will not happen. Just while working on Excel, there are some calculation errors being done. Nothing else. Okay. Moving ahead. Does the amendment of lease have an impact on cash flow statement? Yes, it will have an impact on cash flow statement. Repayment of lease liabilities, whatever lease liabilities that we are paying is considered to be a part of financial activities. Financial activities. Interest payment also is considered to be a part of financial activities. So yes, cash flow statement will have an impact because of this amendment by whatever discount that is received. Okay. What is the most important difference between lease contract as per earlier AS and this Ind AS? As per earlier Ind AS, there were 2 types of leases, finance lease and operating lease. Now we only have one entry, finance lease concept. Okay, you all want the journal entry once again. Let me share the screen again with you. Over here, this amount that I had deducted, I have deducted the wrong interest. This interest amount should have been deducted. So this will be the journal entry, 74,725, 25,274, making it 1 lakh both sides. Now it is tallying exactly 1 lakh both sides. Okay. So I had deducted 5th year's interest by mistake while showing it to you. I should have deducted 6th year's interest. So that was the error. Okay, coming back. I have missed. What is the agreement is about at the end, or what if the lease agreement is about to end before June 2021? You can avail this amendment benefit. This amendment benefit is available to you if the agreement expires before June 2021. What I have said is, if it is supposed to expire after June 2021 and the discount also extends beyond June 2021, we are considering those aspects. Okay. That is why then this amendment cannot be taken. If the discount exceeds June 2021 period, then this amendment is not available. Under which Ind AS accounting in books of lesser is covered? Same standard, Indian Accounting Standard 116. There is no amendment in lessers accounting. That is why I have not discussed lessers part over here. Okay. Next one, ROU asset is shown under which head? Under division 2. We show it separately. There are two options actually given. You can show it inside tangible assets as well, but that is what I suggest all my clients, don't show it under tangible assets, show it separately, and that is what is even followed. You check the balance sheet of TCS, you check the balance sheet of Reliance. Recently I have gone through around 5 to 6 balance sheets. All of them are doing same. See, materiality concept says that anything that is new should be shown separately. Okay. So yes, I'll show you the journal entry again. Just give me 2 minutes. Just let me explain. Okay, with journal entry, I'll explain you. It is better that you, whatever right to use asset are shown separately. This standard says it can be shown along with tangible assets or maybe intangible assets, but it's better you always show it separately, because Indian Accounting Standard 1 says anything that is material, the shareholder should know, should be shown separately. So it is better on the face of division 2 if you are showing it separately. Okay. Okay, coming down to the next question. I believe I have done all the questions. Is it so? A carve out question was done. Under which head it is done? Companies have to adopt full retrospective method this year since it was not done earlier. No. This is not retrospective, this is prospective. As I told you, 1920, okay, for March 2020 you are saying it is just 1 month's impact. Yes, you will have to do it for 1920 as well. But this is not retrospective, this is prospective. From the day modification is made, as I told you, this is done from the date of modification. Okay. Distinction between IFRS and IND AS, sir, it will not be possible right now to cover the distinctions. There are around 5 to 6 distinctions, but they are very minor distinctions, won't matter much. Ma'am, are we done with all the questions? I think we are done with all the questions over here. Can you please summarize the modification once? Yes, what I told you under the modifications is that what happens is, whenever the date there is a revision, whenever there is a date, there is a modification in the rent. Let me share the screen again with you people so that you can understand it well from there. On the date of modification, so it was in the beginning of 6th year in our example, what do? We recalculate the lease liability. We recalculate the lease liability, as we can see over here. We recalculate the lease liability at the rate of discount on the date of modification. The rate of discount on the date of modification. And whatever lease liability that was appearing in your books, let me mark it with some color for everyone. Let's say green color we had done over here. This was the carrying amount, and yellow color shows the modified amount. The difference is adjusted against right to use asset. Difference is adjusted against right to use asset. This is what Indian Accounting Standard 116 says. This is the requirement of Indian Accounting Standard 116. But there is an amendment. What you can do is, whatever discount received can be credited to P&L. Credited to P&L. I am showing it below. You can see in light blue color, 5,000 rupees. So 5,000 discount received, you can credit to P&L and continue accounting as you were accounting earlier. So what happens? You continue to account for interest as earlier. So it was 6%, 25,274. But what you have paid is 1 lakh. What you have paid is 1 lakh. So the difference reduces your lease liability, that is 74,725. But what you have paid is 95,000. Remember not to reduce this amount. Let me mark it with some color. I am marking it with light green. Don't reduce this by 95,000. The amendment reduced amount. Reduce it by original 1 lakh rupees only. So after you reduce it from 1 lakh, it is 74,725, and whatever benefit received should be credited to your PRL. Okay, this is what the requirement of this standard is. So this was a bit of summary for the same. So I hope the webinar has been informative to all of you. Any doubts, any queries specific related to the same, I am sharing my number on chat. You can contact me on this particular number. Okay, you can WhatsApp me or you may call me. Any practical issues that you are facing in your business or anywhere, I'll definitely help you out with the same. No issues related to it. Will there be any adjustment entry for depreciation? Depreciation will be adjusted prospectively. Whatever amount you have adjusted in your right to use asset, the revised right to use asset amount will be depreciated prospectively for the coming years. Okay. Okay. Can you please mention the lease rental is called now? It is still lease liability. Fine. Should it be credited to other comprehensive income? No. It is credited to PRL only. It is not credited to. It is credited to PRL, not to other comprehensive income. Okay. No, sir. I don't accept that. Gone are the days of Ind AS. We have to adopt IFRS. India is still with Indian accounting standards. We are not with IFRS. We have not adopted complete India IFRS. We have just taken them as the base, and we are doing Indian accounting standards. Indian accounting standards are completely based on IFRS, but there are differences. We need to know Indian accounting standard well. Indian accounting standards are IFRS themselves, but we have not completely taken IFRS. Okay, so Indian accounting standard is necessary to know for financials in India, for submission of financials in India. Is there an effect on income tax provisions? Yes, income tax, deferred tax impact will be more, and MAT calculations will change. I will not be able to cover it over here, but deferred tax definitely has, whatever be the tax rate, see, we'll have to take a complete illustrative example for the same to understand the income tax provisions again. Okay, so it will take a lot of time for us to understand that aspect as well. Okay, I believe all of them are done. So we will end our session over here. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm already shared my number. I'm sharing it again. Whatever help you people need related to this particular thing. And sir, you had asked about income tax provision. I can personally discuss the same with you on call for the same. So we can definitely cover it over there. Is there a need to modify Indian Accounting Standard 116 in such pandemic situation? It was needed. That is why it has been done. It was necessary because we need to see, otherwise you need to recalculate the complete thing. So it was helpful, rather they have reduced your burden. So that is why the amendment was brought in. Okay. Okay, fine. Can we end this session over here?